The millionaire CEO sends an email to the wrong address and falls for his assistant's sister. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. It was a typical Wednesday morning, the kind where the soft hum of busy office chatter filled the air and the aroma of fresh coffee lingered throughout the open-plan workspace. Mark Foster, the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the city, was lost in a sea of emails. His hand hovered over the mouse, scrolling through the endless list of tasks he had to tackle. But despite his success, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. His office was immaculate, sleek, modern furniture, polished floors, and a view of the city that would make anyone envious. Yet, it all felt empty. Mark glanced at his phone. A reminder for his lunch meeting flashed on the screen, followed by a series of texts from his assistant, Sarah, detailing the agenda. As the head of a multi-million-dollar company, Mark had everything most people would envy: wealth, power, success. But he felt alone. His personal life had taken a back seat to the grind of running a business. It wasn't the first time he had questioned whether all this was worth it. He sat back in his chair, staring out the window for a moment, lost in thought. Just then, he noticed an email that he hadn't seen before. It was from a name he didn't recognize. Jennifer_Lynn91@email.com. Mail to Jennifer_Lynn91@email.com. Curious, he clicked it open. The subject line was simple, yet striking, regarding your inquiry. He quickly skimmed through the email, assuming it was a reply to one of his business queries. The message was polite, but he couldn't help but notice that it seemed slightly off. It was written in an informal tone, and the mention of a specific detail in the email didn't quite match the inquiry he had sent out. It was as if someone had misinterpreted his request. Mark's brow furrowed. He was about to delete the message when something stopped him. The writing was warm, almost endearing, and there was something about the tone that caught his attention. He glanced at the name again, Jennifer Lynn. He had to admit, there was something intriguing about her. Without giving it much thought, Mark found himself typing a quick response. His fingers danced across the keyboard as he composed a message, not fully realizing that he had typed the wrong email address. Instead of hitting send to Sarah's email, he sent it to Jennifer by mistake. He hit send and leaned back in his chair, waiting for the email to be gone. Just another task checked off. But that wasn't the end of it. Moments later, he received a reply. Mark opened the email, his eyes scanning the words. The message was simple, but it hit him in a way he hadn't expected. Thank you for your email, Mark. I'm not sure if this is the response you were looking for, but I'd be happy to help. Looking forward to hearing from you soon. He stared at the screen, blinking. He had sent the email to the wrong person, but for some reason, he couldn't bring himself to delete it. Instead, he found himself reading it again, feeling a strange connection to the words. It wasn't just the message itself. It was the idea that someone, a stranger, was willing to engage with him in such an open, unguarded way. It was a feeling Mark hadn't had in a long time. A warmth started to build inside him as he realized that Jennifer wasn't just any random person. She was the sister of Sarah, his loyal assistant. He had met Sarah many times, but had never thought to ask about her family. Jennifer's response wasn't just polite. It was human. He hadn't felt this way in a long time. Before he could think too much about it, Mark quickly typed another response. He apologized for the confusion, explaining that it was meant for someone else, but he couldn't shake the strange sense of connection he felt. He hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to send it or not. But then, with a deep breath, he hit send again. Little did he know, this simple mistake would change the course of his life. Mark glanced at his phone and stood up from his desk. The rest of the day went by in a blur. He tried to focus on the tasks at hand, but something kept pulling his mind back to that email. Jennifer. It had been a mistake, but there was something about her that had caught his attention. Something real, something raw, unlike the polished world he lived in. As he walked out of his office, his mind was racing with questions. He couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would Jennifer respond again? And if she did, what would he say? Would it just be a harmless mistake, or was there something more to it? Before he could get lost in the maze of thoughts, Mark's assistant, Sarah, stepped into his office. She gave him a quick update on the upcoming meeting. He nodded absently, his thoughts still with Jennifer. And as the day wore on, Mark couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something unexpected. Something that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with connecting on a human level. Maybe, he thought, he was about to find something he didn't even know he was looking for. And it all started with one simple mistake. So, where will this lead? Well, stay tuned to see how this mistake unravels into something far more than just a misdirected email. Mark sat back in his office chair, staring at the email he had just sent. He had never intended to start a conversation with Jennifer Lynn, yet somehow, her message had intrigued him in a way he couldn't quite explain. Her words were casual, but there was an honesty in them that felt refreshing. She wasn't like the polished professionals he dealt with every day. He found himself wondering about her, about the life she lived, and what it would be like to meet her in person. Mark had been to so many business meetings, attended countless events, but he couldn't remember the last time he had felt such a connection to a complete stranger. The email was a mistake, yes, but there was something about Jennifer that made him want to know more. He leaned forward, his fingers hovering over his keyboard, contemplating what to say next. But before he could type a reply, his assistant Sarah knocked lightly on his door and stepped inside. "Hey, Mark," she said with a smile, "the meeting with the investors is at 3. Are you ready?" He nodded absent-mindedly, still looking at the screen. "Yeah, just a second," he muttered, his thoughts still drifting back to Jennifer. Sarah noticed the change in his demeanor and raised an eyebrow. "You okay? You seem a little distracted." Mark snapped out of his reverie, blinking. "Yeah, just lost in thought." Sarah gave him a curious look, but didn't press the issue. "All right, I'll get the team ready for the meeting," she said, and walked out. Mark watched her go, then glanced at his phone. There was a new message from Jennifer. His heart skipped a beat. He quickly opened it. "Hi, Mark. I wasn't sure if you meant to send your email to me, but if you did, I'm happy to help in any way I can. Looking forward to hearing from you again." It was short and to the point, but something about it made him smile. Jennifer wasn't playing games. She was direct, but kind. That was something Mark hadn't seen in a long time. He felt a pull toward her, something he hadn't felt in years. He decided to reply, this time making sure he was sending the message to the right person. He tapped out a quick response. "Hi, Jennifer. I didn't mean to send the email to you. Apologies for the mix-up earlier. I'm Mark, CEO of Beacon Technologies. I didn't expect to start a conversation with you, but I'm glad we're talking." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. A few moments later, his phone buzzed again. It was a response from Jennifer. "Nice to meet you, Mark. I don't usually get emails from CEOs, but I'm happy to chat. Let's see where this goes." Mark's smile grew wider. This was ridiculous. Why was he so drawn to someone he had never met? Someone he only knew through a simple mistake. But there was something about her words, her openness, that made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. He couldn't help it. He had to meet her. As he left the office for his meeting with the investors, Mark's mind kept wandering back to Jennifer. The rest of the meeting was a blur. His mind was preoccupied with the idea of this woman he barely knew. He kept thinking about the possibility of meeting her, of seeing what it was like in person. Was it crazy? Probably. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the universe's way of nudging him out of his routine, out of the corporate bubble he had built around himself. That evening, he found himself drafting a message to Jennifer. He hesitated for a moment before typing. "I know this might seem sudden, but would you be interested in meeting for coffee sometime? No pressure, just a casual conversation. Let me know what you think." He stared at the message for a moment, wondering if it was too forward, too quick. But before he could delete it, he hit send. He wasn't sure what he was expecting, but he knew one thing. He wanted to know more about this woman. The phone buzzed, and Mark's heart skipped a beat. It was a reply. "I'd love that, Mark. Let's set something up. It's a bit unconventional, but I like it." Mark couldn't believe it. She agreed. This simple exchange, sparked by a mistake, had led to something he hadn't anticipated. Mark was about to meet Jennifer in person. He couldn't help but wonder where this would go. Would it be just a casual meeting, or would something more come out of it? Only time would tell, but for now, he was excited. Excited for something new, something real. For the first time in a long time, Mark felt like he was on the verge of something that wasn't related to business or his hectic CEO life. It was something that could change everything. He grabbed his jacket and headed out the door, feeling a nervous excitement building inside him. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he was ready to find out. As he stepped into the elevator, his phone buzzed again. A new message from Jennifer. Looking forward to our meeting, Mark. I'll be at the cafe at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Can't wait to finally meet you. He smiled to himself. Tomorrow, it was happening. He couldn't wait to see where this unexpected connection would take him. The next day, Mark couldn't shake the excitement and nerves that had been building all morning. It was as though the coffee meeting with Jennifer had become the most important thing in his day. As he stood in front of the cafe, adjusting his tie, he took a deep breath. Was he overthinking this? Probably, but it didn't stop the butterflies in his stomach. He glanced at his watch, 2 p.m., exactly on time. He opened the door to the cafe, and immediately, the warmth of the place wrapped around him. The sound of a low hum of conversation filled the air, and the rich smell of freshly brewed coffee greeted him like an old friend. He scanned the room, his eyes quickly landing on a woman sitting at the corner table. She was looking down at her phone, oblivious to the world around her, with an expression of calm focus. Jennifer. He took another deep breath and walked over. As he approached, Jennifer looked up, and their eyes met for the first time. Her smile was warm, and there was something instantly familiar about her. She had the kind of smile that made you feel at ease, like you were meeting an old friend, even if it was only the first time. Hi, Mark, she said, standing up to shake his hand. I'm so glad you could make it. Mark returned the smile, his nervousness beginning to fade. It's great to finally meet you in person, he said as they both sat down. I hope you didn't mind the mix-up with the email. Jennifer chuckled softly. Honestly, I didn't expect this to go anywhere, but I'm glad it did. Sometimes the best things happen by accident, right? Mark laughed, feeling the tension slip away. I guess that's true, and I'm really glad it did. I've been looking forward to this all day. As they began chatting, Mark couldn't help but be impressed by how easy it was to talk to Jennifer. It felt completely natural, like they had known each other for years. She was sharp, witty, and down-to-earth, all qualities he admired. They talked about everything: work, hobbies, their personal lives. Jennifer shared stories about her family, her passion for design, and her dream of one day opening her own gallery. Mark found himself captivated by her words. There was something refreshing about her that he couldn't put his finger on. It was as if she wasn't concerned with the same superficial things that so many people in his world cared about. They didn't discuss wealth or status, just real, human things. What she loved, what made her tick. It was a welcome change from the usual business talk he was so accustomed to. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and soon, they were laughing together, exchanging anecdotes and jokes. Jennifer's laughter was contagious, and Mark felt a warmth in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in what felt like ages, he wasn't thinking about the next meeting or the next big business deal. He was simply enjoying the moment. As the conversation continued, Mark found himself telling Jennifer things he hadn't shared with anyone in years. About his struggles as a CEO, the pressures of the job, and how lonely it could be at the top. Jennifer listened intently, her expression kind and understanding. There was no judgment in her eyes, just genuine curiosity. It was a rare feeling for Mark, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he felt seen for who he truly was. Not just as the CEO of a company, but as a person. As the afternoon wore on, they both realized that the cafe was starting to empty out. Jennifer checked her phone and glanced up at Mark. I'm really enjoying this, Mark, she said, a little hesitantly. I didn't expect us to connect this well. Mark smiled softly, his eyes meeting hers. I didn't either, but I'm really glad we did. Jennifer smiled back, and for a moment, there was a comfortable silence between them. Mark couldn't help but feel like something had shifted inside him. There was something about Jennifer, something real and unpretentious, that had begun to pull him out of the shell he had been in for so long. After a few moments, he spoke again. So, what's next for you, Jennifer? I mean, outside of this cafe? Jennifer's eyes lit up as she started talking about her plans, her ideas, and the possibilities she saw for herself in the future. Mark listened intently, realizing how deeply he admired her determination and passion. As they wrapped up their coffee, they both stood and made their way to the door. Jennifer smiled at Mark again, and he felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. Let's do this again sometime, Mark said, his voice genuine. I'd like that. Jennifer replied with a warm smile. As Mark walked away from the cafe, he felt a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in a long time. There was something about Jennifer that made him want to step out of his comfort zone, to embrace something real for once. For the first time in years, he was excited for what might come next, and he wasn't afraid of it. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something far bigger than he had imagined. The next few days after the coffee meeting were a whirlwind for Mark. His mind was still consumed by Jennifer, and he couldn't help but replay their conversation over and over. For someone he had only met by accident, she had made a lasting impression. He had spent years in the corporate world, constantly surrounded by people, but Jennifer was different. She was real, unpretentious, and had a warmth that Mark hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just her personality that captivated him. It was the way she made him feel like a person again, not just a CEO. As much as he tried to focus on his work, his thoughts kept drifting back to her. He found himself looking forward to their next meeting, whatever it might be. He realized he hadn't felt this kind of anticipation in years. The phone buzzed on his desk, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from Jennifer. "Hey Mark, I hope you're doing well. I was thinking about our last meeting, and I was wondering if you'd be up for a walk in the park this weekend. I know it's a little unconventional, but I think it would be nice to just relax and talk some more. Let me know what you think." Mark smiled as he read the message, feeling his heart lift. She had a way of making things feel light and easy, even when they were still getting to know each other. He quickly replied, "Hi Jennifer, I'd love to. A walk sounds perfect. Let's meet at 10 a.m. on Saturday at Riverside Park. Looking forward to it." As soon as he hit send, he felt a flutter of excitement. The idea of spending time with Jennifer outside of the cafe, in a more casual setting, felt right. Saturday morning arrived quickly, and Mark found himself standing at the entrance of Riverside Park, waiting for Jennifer. It wasn't as cold as it had been the previous week, and the air had that crisp feeling that made everything seem fresh and new. He checked his watch, and just as he was starting to second-guess himself, he saw her walking toward him. She was wearing a cozy sweater and a scarf, her hair tucked neatly into a bun. She looked effortlessly beautiful, and as she approached, her smile made his heart race. "Hey Mark," she greeted him warmly. "You made it." He smiled back, feeling a rush of relief. "Of course, I wouldn't miss it. How's your week been?" They began walking side by side, the sound of their footsteps mingling with the peaceful quiet of the park. The leaves had started to turn, and the colors of the trees reflected the soft glow of the morning sun. It was the perfect setting, and for the first time in a long time, Mark felt at ease. They talked about everything, about work, about their families, about their dreams. Jennifer shared more about her passion for design, and Mark found himself even more drawn to her determination. She spoke with such enthusiasm about her future, her plans, and the projects she wanted to start. For someone who had so little, she had so much ambition. He admired that. He shared some of his own thoughts, too, about how running a company was both rewarding and exhausting, and how he often felt like something was missing in his life. Jennifer listened intently, offering her thoughts and perspectives, and Mark realized how much he appreciated her ability to truly listen. They stopped at a bench overlooking the river, the soft breeze rustling the branches of the trees around them. Jennifer sat down first, and Mark followed suit, settling beside her. "You know," she said, her voice thoughtful, "I think a lot of people get caught up in the idea of success and forget what really matters. It's not about money or status. It's about finding what makes you happy, what gives your life meaning." Mark turned to her, taken aback by the sincerity in her words. "That's actually really profound," he said, his voice quieter than usual. Jennifer shrugged, looking out over the water. "I just think sometimes people get so wrapped up in the things they think they need to achieve that they forget about what they already have. Like family, friends, love, all those things are more important than any number on a bank statement." Mark felt a lump form in his throat. He had spent so much of his life chasing success, working late nights, making deals, and building a business empire. But in that moment, sitting next to Jennifer, he realized she was right. He had been so focused on the destination, he hadn't stopped to enjoy the journey. "I never really thought about it that way," he admitted. Jennifer smiled gently. "That's why it's so important to slow down, sometimes, and just breathe." Mark took a deep breath, absorbing her words. It felt like a weight was lifting off his shoulders. He had been so focused on being the perfect CEO the perfect businessman, that he had forgotten how to just live. Sitting there, with Jennifer beside him, it felt like the first real moment of peace he had experienced in years. They spent the next hour walking around the park, laughing, talking, and enjoying each other's company. By the time they were ready to leave, Mark felt a sense of contentment that he hadn't felt in a long time. Jennifer had a way of making him see the world in a different light. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time in ages, he felt hopeful. As they parted ways, Jennifer gave him one last smile. "Thanks for today, Mark. I really needed this." Mark nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Me too, Jennifer. I'll see you soon." And with that, he watched her walk away, feeling like his life had just taken a turn for the better. The following week, Mark found himself thinking about Jennifer more often than he cared to admit. Their walk in the park had left a lasting impression on him. Something had shifted inside of him, something he hadn't felt in years. Jennifer's words, her perspective on life, had opened his eyes in ways he hadn't expected. It was as if she had reminded him of something he had forgotten, what it meant to simply live, to connect with people beyond the business world. He had always been a man of numbers and deadlines, a man who built his empire from the ground up, but in the back of his mind, he had started to question if that was all there was to life. As the days passed, Mark couldn't help but notice how much of a difference Jennifer had made in his outlook. He found himself smiling more, enjoying the simple things, like the morning coffee he had once rushed through or the way the sun shone through the office windows. It was like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He was no longer just running on autopilot, obsessed with the next big deal or achievement. For the first time, he was letting himself feel. It wasn't long before he reached out to Jennifer again. This time, he didn't want to wait for the next accidental meeting. He wanted to see her again. He sent a text. "Hey, Jennifer. I know we've both been busy, but I was thinking, maybe we could have dinner together this weekend? No business talk, just a chance to relax and enjoy some good food." As soon as he sent the message, Mark felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. It wasn't like him to be so open, to be so vulnerable. But with Jennifer, it felt easy. He waited anxiously for her response, his heart racing. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed with her reply. "I'd love that, Mark. How about Friday at 7 p.m.? I know a great Italian place." He smiled as he read her message. "Sounds perfect. I'll see you then," he quickly responded. Friday couldn't come soon enough. Mark found himself looking forward to the evening with anticipation. He got off work a little earlier than usual, took some time to freshen up, and put on his favorite suit. As he stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, he realized how much he was starting to care about Jennifer. It was strange. He hadn't expected to develop feelings this quickly, but there was something about her that made him want to be around her, to get to know her better. He felt something real, something he hadn't felt in a long time. When he arrived at the restaurant, he was greeted by the host and led to a cozy corner table. The ambience was intimate, with soft lighting and the faint sound of music playing in the background. Mark took a seat and waited, his nerves buzzing with excitement. Jennifer arrived a few minutes later, looking effortlessly beautiful in a black dress. She smiled when she saw him and walked over. "Hey, Mark," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "It's so good to see you again." Mark stood up and pulled out the chair for her. "It's great to see you too, Jennifer. You look amazing." Jennifer smiled and sat down, her eyes sparkling. "Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this. It's been a hectic week." Mark nodded, his mind still racing. "I know what you mean. But tonight, no work talk. Just us." Jennifer's smile widened. "Agreed." As they sat down and started chatting, Mark realized how comfortable he felt with her. The conversation flowed effortlessly, just like it had during their walk in the park. They talked about their favorite hobbies, their childhood memories, and even their favorite movies. Jennifer made him laugh in a way he hadn't in ages, and as the night went on, he found himself opening up to her even more. He told her about his childhood, about how he had grown up in a small town and how his parents had always encouraged him to follow his dreams, even when it seemed impossible. He shared the pressure he felt as a CEO and how, for years, he had been consumed by the need to succeed. Jennifer listened intently, offering her thoughts and encouragement. She never judged, never seemed to look at him as anything other than a person. It was refreshing, and Mark found himself grateful for her presence. As the evening went on, they ordered dessert, a rich chocolate cake that they shared. When the check arrived, Mark insisted on paying, but Jennifer playfully argued. "You're not getting away that easily, Mark," she said with a wink. Mark laughed. "You're a tough negotiator." "I'm just being fair," she said with a grin. "We both deserve this night." Mark couldn't help but smile. It felt good to be around someone who saw him as more than just a CEO. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was simply Mark, not the head of a multi-million-dollar company. After they finished dinner, Mark walked Jennifer out to her car. He stood there for a moment, looking at her, feeling a sense of contentment he hadn't felt in a while. "Thank you for tonight, Jennifer," he said, his voice sincere. "I really enjoyed it." Jennifer smiled warmly. "Me too, Mark. I'm glad we could do this." They stood in silence for a moment, and then Mark took a deep breath. "I'd like to do this again, if you're open to it," he said, his voice a little nervous but hopeful. Jennifer's smile widened. "I'd like that too, Mark." With that, they shared a brief but meaningful hug, and Jennifer got into her car and drove away. Mark watched her leave, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. Maybe this was the beginning of something real, something that wasn't about business or success. It was about connection, about finding someone who made you feel alive in ways you never thought possible. As he walked back to his car, Mark couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of a journey he was ready to take. The days following their dinner felt like a breath of fresh air to Mark. His mind had been clearer, his heart lighter, and he found himself thinking about Jennifer more often than he had anticipated. There was something about her, something real and grounding, that had begun to shift his perspective. He had spent so much of his life focused on the business world, chasing after success, and in the process, he had lost sight of what truly mattered. But with Jennifer, everything felt different. Their connection was effortless, and it seemed like every time they spoke, Mark discovered more about himself and the things he had been missing. It wasn't just her beauty or her intelligence that attracted him. It was her warmth, her ability to listen, and her honesty. He hadn't realized how much he craved that kind of genuine interaction until he had it. Jennifer had a way of making him feel like he wasn't just another CEO or businessman. He was Mark, a person who deserved to be seen and understood. The weekend came quickly, and they made plans to meet again. This time, Mark suggested a different idea. He wanted to take her to a local art gallery he had recently discovered. Jennifer, being passionate about design and art, had been excited by the idea. They agreed to meet there at 11 a.m. on Saturday. As Mark arrived at the gallery, he felt a nervous excitement stir in his chest. He couldn't help but feel that their connection was growing deeper with each passing moment, and he couldn't wait to see where it would lead. When Jennifer arrived, she looked even more radiant than before. She was wearing a simple yet elegant dress that complemented the day's warm sunlight. Her hair was pulled back into a soft ponytail, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she stepped inside. "Hey, Mark," she greeted him with a smile, her voice filled with warmth. "This place looks amazing." Mark grinned. "I thought you'd like it. The exhibits change every month, so there's always something new to see." They walked through the gallery together, chatting about the different pieces of art and sharing their opinions. It was a pleasant and light-hearted afternoon, with no pressure, just two people enjoying each other's company. Mark was amazed at how easy it was to talk to Jennifer. They both had different tastes in art, but their conversations flowed effortlessly, and he found himself learning more about her with each passing minute. As they moved through the rooms, they came across an abstract piece that caught Jennifer's eye. "This one is beautiful," she said, standing in front of it, her hand gently reaching out to trace the air just above the painting. "I love how it feels so chaotic, yet so controlled at the same time." Mark stood beside her, looking at the piece from her perspective. "I see what you mean," he said. "It's like there's a hidden order beneath all the randomness." Jennifer smiled at him, a look of admiration in her eyes. "You're good at this. You should consider coming to more art exhibits." Mark chuckled. "I'll take you up on that offer." The afternoon went on, and by the time they left the gallery, Mark couldn't help but feel like something significant had happened. It wasn't just the art or the place they had visited. It was the time they had spent together, the way they connected so easily, and how comfortable they felt around each other. As they walked out into the sunlight, Jennifer turned to him with a grin. "This was fun, Mark. I really enjoyed it." Mark smiled back, feeling his heart flutter. "I did too. It's always nice to see the world through someone else's eyes." Jennifer's smile softened. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about our conversations. About what you said the other day, about how you've been feeling. I think you're on the right path. It's okay to let go of some of the pressure and just be. Mark looked at her, touched by her words. You're right. It's easy to get caught up in the chase, but sometimes the most important things are the ones you don't expect. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, the world around them fading into the background. It was one of those rare moments when everything just felt right. As they said their goodbyes and parted ways, Mark felt a sense of peace that had been missing from his life for far too long. Jennifer had shown him that there was more to life than just success and power. There was connection, there was understanding, and there was love. And for the first time in years, Mark was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was ready for all of it. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur. Mark found himself thinking about Jennifer constantly, replaying their time together over and over in his mind. He realized he had never met anyone like her before, and he wasn't sure where things would go, but he knew one thing for sure. He wanted to see where this connection would take them. And as the days passed, it became more and more clear to him that his life had just changed in ways he never expected. He was no longer just a man chasing after goals. He was someone who had found something real, something worth holding on to. The following week, Mark found himself in a whirlwind of emotions. His time with Jennifer had left an imprint on him, something he hadn't expected but couldn't ignore. Every time he thought about her, a feeling of warmth and calm would wash over him. And for once, he didn't feel the constant pressure of being a CEO. He felt like he was rediscovering parts of himself that had been buried for years under the weight of success and expectation. The workday had come and gone, and yet, his thoughts kept returning to her. Jennifer was different from anyone he had ever met. She wasn't intimidated by his title or wealth. She saw him as a person, not a position. And that made all the difference. They had continued to message and meet up casually, each time feeling more and more comfortable in each other's presence. But as much as Mark enjoyed the moments they shared, something lingered in the back of his mind, a fear that he couldn't quite shake. He had been so consumed by his career for so long, so focused on business and growth, that he was unsure if he was ready for something real, something deeper. Was he really ready to let someone into his life like that? Was he ready to be vulnerable? Or would he end up pushing her away like so many others before? These questions clouded his mind as he sat at his desk late one evening. The city lights twinkled outside his window, but they couldn't provide the clarity he was searching for. His phone buzzed, breaking his thoughts. It was a message from Jennifer. Hey Mark, I know you've been busy, but I was thinking, maybe we could go to that new restaurant you mentioned next weekend? I'd love to spend more time with you, if you're free. Mark's heart skipped a beat. Her message was simple, yet it carried so much meaning. She was reaching out, and once again, he was faced with the question, was he ready to take the next step? He hesitated for a moment, but then something in him clicked. He didn't want to overthink this. He just wanted to enjoy the moment with her. He quickly typed a reply. I'd love that, Jennifer. How about Saturday at 7? I'll make a reservation. He hit send, feeling a rush of excitement, but also a hint of nervousness. Saturday couldn't come soon enough. When the day finally arrived, Mark was a bundle of nerves. He had been thinking about the dinner all week, and now it was time to face the feelings he had been avoiding. He knew he cared about Jennifer, but he wasn't sure how deep those feelings ran or what the future held. As he prepared for the evening, he found himself questioning everything: his career, his past relationships, and whether he was truly ready to let someone in. But as soon as he saw Jennifer standing outside the restaurant, smiling at him, those doubts began to fade away. She was wearing a simple yet elegant dress that complemented her effortlessly graceful presence. Her smile was the same one he had seen so many times, but now, it felt like it meant something more. Hi, Mark, she said softly as she approached, her eyes lighting up as they met his. I'm so glad we're doing this. Mark smiled, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. Me too, Jennifer. You look amazing. She grinned, her cheeks flushing slightly. Thank you. I'm really excited for tonight. As they walked into the restaurant, Mark felt a sense of calm wash over him. This was different. This was real. They sat down at their table, and as the evening progressed, their conversation flowed just as naturally as it had during their previous meetings. They talked about everything, about their favorite foods, the places they wanted to travel, their hopes and dreams. It was the kind of conversation Mark hadn't had in years. There was no pressure, no agenda, just two people getting to know each other. As the night wore on, Mark realized how easy it was to be with her. He was no longer worried about what was expected of him. He didn't need to impress her. He just needed to be himself. And that, for the first time in a long time, felt like enough. By the end of the night, as they stood outside the restaurant, Mark felt like he had crossed a threshold. He was no longer the same person he had been when he walked in. Something had shifted within him, and he could feel it in the way he looked at Jennifer. She wasn't just someone he was casually dating. She was someone he was beginning to see a future with. "I had a great time tonight, Jennifer," Mark said, his voice sincere. "Me too," she replied, her smile softening. "I'm really glad we did this." Mark paused for a moment, then took a deep breath. "I'm glad too. And I want to be honest with you, Jennifer. I've been holding back a little. I've been so focused on my career, on all the things I thought I needed to do, that I didn't let myself see what was right in front of me." Jennifer looked at him, her eyes filled with understanding. "Mark, it's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out. Life isn't about perfection. It's about moments like this, being present, connecting, and taking it one step at a time." Mark smiled, feeling the weight of her words sink in. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. He reached out and gently took her hand. "You're right," he said softly, "and I'm ready to take that step." The moment lingered, and as they shared a quiet embrace, Mark realized that he was no longer running from what he truly wanted. He was ready to embrace the future with Jennifer, no matter what it might bring. The weeks that followed felt like a new chapter for Mark. He had never expected his life to take such an unexpected turn, but every moment with Jennifer made him realize how much he had been missing. They continued to meet, spending time together in ways that felt natural and effortless. Whether it was grabbing coffee on the weekends or exploring new spots around the city, Mark found himself looking forward to every minute spent with her. There was a growing connection between them, and for the first time in a long time, Mark felt like he wasn't just running through life. He was truly living. But as their relationship deepened, Mark began to realize that he had yet to be fully open with Jennifer about his past. He had shared so much with her already: the struggles of being a CEO, the weight of the responsibilities, and even his uncertainty about his future. But there was still one thing he hadn't told her: his childhood. The way he had grown up, the pressures of his family, the expectations that had been placed on him since he was young. He had never been one to dwell on the past, but as his feelings for Jennifer grew, so did his desire to be completely honest with her. One evening, after a quiet dinner at his apartment, Jennifer and Mark found themselves sitting on the couch, sipping wine and talking about life. The conversation flowed easily, as it always did, but this time, Mark felt a tug in his chest, a need to be vulnerable with her, to share a part of himself that he had kept buried for so long. "Jennifer," he began, his voice soft, "there's something I haven't really talked about. Something I've kept to myself for a long time." Jennifer turned to him, her expression filled with concern. "What is it, Mark? You can tell me." He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the words he was about to say. "It's about my childhood, about how I grew up." Jennifer leaned forward slightly, her eyes focused on him, waiting for him to continue. "I grew up in a small town," Mark started, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "My family wasn't poor, but we didn't have much. My parents were hard workers, and they always expected the best from me. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I think my parents saw me as their way out, their way to prove that all their sacrifices had been worth it. But with that came a lot of pressure. I had to succeed. I had to be perfect." He paused for a moment, collecting his thoughts. "It wasn't easy. I pushed myself so hard to make something of myself, to live up to their expectations. I ended up leaving home after graduation to start my career in the city, but even then, the pressure never really went away. It was always there, in the back of my mind. Be successful. Don't fail. Don't disappoint." Jennifer's expression softened as she listened, her heart aching for him. "Mark, that sounds incredibly difficult. I can't imagine what that must have been like for you." He nodded, grateful for her understanding. "It was hard, but it made me who I am today. I'm proud of what I've achieved, but sometimes I wonder if I've been chasing the wrong things all along. I've been so focused on success and status that I didn't stop to think about what I truly wanted. And now, with you, I feel like I'm finally starting to understand what that is." Jennifer reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "Mark, I think you're finally allowing yourself to breathe. To be yourself, not just the person everyone expects you to be. He smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. You're right. And that's why I'm telling you all of this. I want you to know who I really am, not just the guy you've been spending time with lately. I want you to see the real me. Jennifer nodded, her eyes filled with affection. I already see the real you, Mark. The one who's kind, thoughtful, and genuinely trying to make a difference in the world. You don't have to prove anything to me. I care about you for who you are, not for what you've achieved. Mark's heart swelled with emotion as he looked at her. Thank you, Jennifer. That means more to me than you know. They sat in silence for a few moments, just holding hands, the weight of the conversation settling in. Mark had always been afraid of being vulnerable, of letting someone in. But with Jennifer it felt different. She wasn't just a passing connection. She was someone he could truly be himself with. As they continued to talk late into the evening, Mark felt something shift within him. He wasn't the man who had spent his entire life chasing perfection anymore. He was someone who had found peace, who had found love, and who was finally ready to embrace the future, whatever it might hold. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of it. He was ready to face whatever came his way, with Jennifer by his side. As they said goodnight, Mark kissed her gently on the cheek, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't known was possible. Good night, Jennifer. I'm really glad you're in my life. She smiled softly, her eyes filled with affection. Good night, Mark. I'm glad you're in mine too. As he watched her leave, Mark couldn't help but feel that everything was falling into place. He didn't need to be perfect anymore. He just needed to be real. And for the first time in a long time, he was okay with that. As the weeks passed, Mark and Jennifer's relationship blossomed in ways he hadn't imagined. What had started as a simple coffee meeting had grown into something far deeper and more meaningful. Mark found himself looking forward to every moment they spent together, and each time they met, he felt more at ease with her, more open, and more himself. Jennifer had a way of drawing him out of his shell without even trying. She was kind, understanding, and never pushed him to be someone he wasn't. She allowed him to be vulnerable, and in doing so, he began to shed the layers of self-imposed pressure he had carried for years. One evening, after a quiet dinner at his apartment, Mark and Jennifer found themselves sitting on the couch, talking about their dreams for the future. You know, Jennifer said, her voice thoughtful, I've been thinking a lot about the things I want in life. I've spent so much time focusing on my career and my family, but I've never really thought about what I truly want for myself. It feels good to finally be honest with myself about that. Mark nodded, his heart swelling with affection for her. I know exactly what you mean, said softly. I've spent so much time chasing success and trying to prove myself, but in the end, I think what matters most is finding happiness, finding balance. He paused for a moment, then turned to her, his voice more serious. Jennifer, I've been thinking a lot about us, about where we're going and what this means. I've never felt this way about someone before. Jennifer looked at him, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. Mark, I've felt the same way. I think about you all the time, and it's not just because of the connection we share. It's because I believe in what we have. I believe in you. Mark's heart raced as he reached out and took her hand in his. I don't want to overthink this. I just want to be with you, Jennifer. I want to build something real, something lasting. You make me want to be a better person, and I don't think I can imagine my life without you in it. A soft smile spread across Jennifer's face as she squeezed his hand. Mark, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for something real, something genuine, and I believe that's exactly what we have. I'm ready for whatever comes next, as long as we're in it together. Mark felt a weight lift from his shoulders, as if the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. For so long, he had been afraid of being vulnerable, of letting someone in. But with Jennifer, everything felt right. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was ready to embrace whatever the future held. As the days passed, Mark found himself thinking more about the possibility of a future with Jennifer. They continued to grow closer, sharing more of their hopes and fears with each other. There was a newfound sense of trust between them, and every moment they spent together only reinforced the bond they had formed. One evening, Mark took Jennifer to a beautiful park near his apartment, a place he had often visited to clear his mind. The sun was setting, casting a soft glow across the landscape. They walked hand in hand, enjoying the quiet moment. You know, Mark said, breaking the comfortable silence, I've been thinking about something. Jennifer turned to him, her eyes curious. What is it? Mark took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. I've never really believed in fate or destiny, but I have to say, meeting you feels like it was meant to be. I've never felt this way before, and I can't help but think that maybe this is the start of something incredible. Jennifer smiled, her eyes lighting up with affection. I feel the same way, Mark. It's like everything led me to this moment. I've never been this sure about anything in my life. Mark stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both of her hands in his. Jennifer, I know we've been through a lot together, and I know life can be unpredictable, but I want to be with you. I want to build a life with you, starting right here, right now. Will you take this journey with me? Jennifer's smile grew wider as she looked into his eyes, and for a moment, everything else faded away. Yes, Mark. I will. I'm ready for this journey, and I wanted to be with you. Mark felt a rush of emotions as he pulled her into a hug. For the first time in his life, he felt completely at peace. This was it. This was what he had been waiting for. The uncertainty, the fears, the pressure, it all melted away in that moment. He was ready for whatever the future held, as long as Jennifer was by his side. And in that moment, he knew that everything would be okay. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, knowing that their journey together was just beginning. It was a new chapter, one filled with promise, love, and the kind of happiness that only came from being true to oneself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Mark knew that his life had changed forever. And with Jennifer, he was finally home.